Welcome to the TripComms Fantasy Ballers of 2013. We're going to break down the best fantasy players from the year, along with the biggest failures from the fantasy 2013 season. So these are going to be the best possible guy you could draft, along with the worst possible guy you could draft, or as we are calling them, the fantasy studs and duds. So let's do this. We're going to start off, as always, with quarterback. Obviously, the fucking fantasy stud of the year, not only just quarterback, but overall, is Peyton Manning.
Yeah, Peyton Manning definitely shows off this year. I mean, he's definitely got MVP written all over him this year. So, no questions about that one. I mean, it was a quick answer.
Good call. The fantasy dud quarterback this year. If you drafted this guy, that's a fail. And that would be Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons. Don't know what happened there. Guy actually surprisingly was pretty good for fantasy purposes. You know, you could win a championship with him and some better players around him, but not this year.
Yeah, he just failed with losing all of his good wide receivers for a long period of time, and had to deal with what he had, and he just sort of sucked. So yeah.
Well said. Well said. On to running back. Another obvious answer, of course, fantasy stud of the year for the running back position. If it wasn't for Peyton, he would be MVP, I'm sure, and that's Jamal Charles.
Yeah, Jamal definitely is solid. I mean, you look at all of his stats, he raised his touchdowns quite a bit compared to the last couple of years, and I mean, his rushing yards are up there definitely, but his amount of touchdowns is just astronomical, which makes his fantasy points ridiculous. So definitely great. Fantasy.
That combined with his receiving yards are, of course, off the chain as well.
Out of control.
And you got to say that I know you had him. You had him in. We have a pretty competitive fantasy league, and I know you had him. So he was a baller. Unfortunately, you could not make the playoffs with him. But hey, he's still a stud.
Points.
I know.
Consolation tournament.
Yeah, had you made the playoffs, you probably would have won the whole thing with good old Jamal Charles there. So moving on, the fantasy dud. Everybody knows him. Trent Richardson.
Man.
What happened?
A second round draft pick for most people. Maybe even first if people reached, crazy.
Yep.
But, complete failure. I don't know what the deal is. If he just sucks or had a bad year. I really don't know. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Really?
Just say he had a bad year, but I'm starting to become skeptical and think he sucks, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mirror those thoughts exactly. Yep. Moving on to wide receiver. Number one in fantasy points, and this is strictly by our league's rules, which are pretty standard, so it should be, for the most part, the same as most everybody's, unless you're playing in a PPR. We don't do that. But number one, Josh Gordon, number one wide receiver this year. Congratulations. He's in the first round argument next year, or, he's up there. The failure, the dud wide receiver, no touchdowns on the year, Hakeem Nicks.
Yeah, complete failure. No touchdowns. There's no excuse for that. I mean, come on. Really? No touchdowns? You suck.
Yeah, fail. And what do you think about Josh Gordon next year? Would you possibly draft him in the first round?
It'd be hard, maybe late first round.
I feel you.
But he is a solid wide receiver. I mean, he'd have 0 points for 2 quarters, and then he'd end up with 20-something points blowing up in that second half. ridiculous.
I went last. There was I don't know if it was last game, but it was the game before. But he was shut out the whole game, and then bam, 50-yard touchdown, money. Moving on to the tight end, little Jimmy Graham. He's by far the number one guy. Talk about first round next year. Jeez, I mean he's massive. He's
Definitely
a big motherfucker.
Yeah.
A lot of people drafted Jared Cook expecting big things now that he's with the Rams, and that would have led to a fail because he sucked.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I mean, the first game of the year, he blew up.
Yep.
Had almost 30 points. And we were all like, damn, Jared Cook, we all overlooked this guy. How could we overlook this guy?
Yeah.
And then the next week, he got like not even 2 points or something.
And the week after that.
And then we realized
and the week
he
after
sucked,
that. And the
like
week
always.
after that.
So, yeah, big fail.
Yep. He's a fantasy dud. Moving on to the kicker position. Number one, kind of surprising to me. And then I looked for the season prior, and he was up there for that season as well. Obviously, the Patriots have a good offense, so maybe it shouldn't be a big surprise. But the number one fantasy kicker of the year, Steven Gostkowski. Props if you drafted him. Because that's one of those guys that's not available free agent. Someone drafted him. And if you did, you got the best guy. He's better than Justin Tucker, better than Matt Prater, better than all those guys. And the dud would be Matt Bryant, who I actually drafted and was able to trade. I actually traded him for Matt Prater in some zany trade. But, Steven Gostkowski, Matt Bryant. Unfortunately, your boy David Akers, he didn't make the list.
He sucks.
Yeah. You sported him all year, though. I'll give you props.
Negative
you hung with
points 1 week.
Yep. Defensive end. On to defensive. This is mainly for IDP players, which we here at TripComms are big fans of. Number one defensive end, Robert Quinn, no question. We were sitting around, we were chilling, watching the Bucks game last week. Got 3 sacks on us.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
Yep. Wow. Cameron Wake, another one of your boys. We don't like to put injured guys on the list. This is more about guys who played all year and just continue to fail most weeks. Cameron Wake did have a pretty bad injury, so this is the one guy that, But that said, when he got back in there, he did nothing. He had 1 game.
Yeah, he started off horrible even before the injury.
True.
And he still played, actually, through the injury somewhat, and he sucked. He had 1 good game all year where he got like a safety and was on my bench because he was sucking, and I lost that week.
Yep.
But he sucked.
Defensive tackles. Number 1. Oh, God, man. Looking back, he didn't make the all Trippy team, but we definitely talked about him. We probably should have thrown a 4th defensive tackle just in honor of big motherfucking Kyle Williams. Big guy, getting work done next to our boy Marcel Darius.
Yeah.
And our pretty disappointing defensive tackle is going to be Sharif Floyd. He's a rookie. But coming in next to Kevin Williams, we thought he would make some waves. He was pretty pathetic this year, unfortunately.
Very, very highly touted.
Yeah.
Was supposed to make an impact, right away coming out of college. One of those type players, and
exactly.
Not so much. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, that was one of those guys. People were down on him a little bit right before the draft, and it was like, okay. All right, so we'll see what happens. But then he lands in Minnesota next to Kevin Williams. So it's like, wow, perfect. It's a great spot for him to land.
But,
not so much.
He's a rookie, so you got to give him time.
Yeah, so moving on to linebackers. We got number 1, Carlos Dansby for Arizona. As we said in the All Trippy team, when we broke down that, Carlos made the inside linebackers for that. He was actually the number 1 inside linebacker, as he deserves to be. He's just a playmaker. He gets things done.
Yeah. I mean, he gets ridiculous amounts of points every week and makes plays, and that's what he's all about.
You traded him to me in the fantasy league, so that was good. He actually got me into the playoffs, so
Wins you games.
that was good. Yeah, right. Straight up, man. Wins you games for a linebacker. That's important. The disappointing linebacker of the year, the dud, is Daryl Sharpton for the Texans. Now he took over for Brian Cushing when he got injured, and if you look at his game log, just nothing. It's like all the way down the list. You know, he had a couple 8-point games. That's about it.
Yeah, failure.
Yep. Here's the number one quarterback of the year. Still doing his thing. Can you believe it? D'Angelo fucking Hall.
Wow. D'Angelo Hall. Old
Can
man.
you believe that? Number one cornerback this year.
Gotta give him props. Gotta give him
guess.
props. Still making tons of tackles. Getting the ball thrown at him all the time.
Oh, yeah, exactly, right?
Hey, he makes plays still, though. You gotta give him that.
Yeah, disappointing this year for Tim Jennings, our dud. You know, unfortunately, Charles Tillman went down. Maybe that hurt his value a little bit. But, I mean, he's normally, year after year, he's up there as far as fantasy points for IDP players. And not so much this year. He fell off the map entirely.
Yeah, I think, like you said, though, Tillman got hurt, and that might have hurt his value somewhat. So
True. But, hey, that has nothing to do with him. And he let us down. If we were using him, you know, by halfway through the season, we were dropping him because we realized ain't going to happen. Moving on to the last position for the fantasy studs and duds. The stud this year, if you know fantasy IDP, then you know it's no doubt Barry Church. Guy's been all over the place. They insert him at linebacker half the time. Real good player, man. And unfortunately, the Cowboys defense sucks, so we didn't include him on the all Trippy team. But, you know, I wish I had him. You know, fuck. My safety sucked all year. Except for the Honey Badger, and then he got injured, so... George Ioka, fantasy dud. I liked him coming into the year. He's actually a pretty good real-life player, and fantasy-wise, useless.
yeah, I don't know what happened. I heard about him and thought he was going to be good, but he failed all year. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Unfortunately, so that's that. You know, that is the fantasy studs and duds for 2013, and you know. 1 year down the drain. I can't wait for next year, man. I'm coming back for the title in our league, and hope everybody listening is hopefully going to get that title. Hopefully they got it this year, but next year we'll come with some information for you, try to help you out. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more sports fantasy stuff coming through from TripComms. Peace out.
Later. Later.